Good morning everyone, welcome back. In our previous video we were discussing psychological testing. In that we have discussed about key concepts of psychological testing like reliability, validity, standardization, norms. So today we will discuss about types of psychological test. So let's start. Psychological tests are classified on the basis of their language, mode of administration, and difficulty level. So, firstly, we will start depending upon the language. Depending upon the language, we have verbal, non-verbal, and performance test. So, we will discuss on the screen language. Firstly, I want to explain about language and non-language test. Language test. In a paper pencil language, the test content generally contains of picture, diagrams, and non-linguistic symbols, and the subject is required to respond by making relatively simple marks. Instructions are given by gestures and pantomimes and demonstration involving charts and diagrams. Those are language tests. Non-language tests. In non-language test, language neither written nor spoken. In neither the instruction nor the test item is required. No language test area specially designed for the testees who are illiterate, unfamiliar with the native language, and can either be a performance or a paper pencil test. So here you can see about verbal and non-verbal test also. Verbal test, literacy is required for taking verbal test as the items have to be written in some language. So they can be designed as reading and non-reading test. In the former, reading, writing are required. In the later, neither reading nor writing is required. But these tests make extensive use of oral instruction and communication on the part of time examiner. Such tests frequently measure verbal comprehension such as vocabulary and understanding with oral instructions to accompany each item. So unlike the non-language tests, they are unsuited for foreign language speaking and deaf tests. Here you can see about paper pencil test and performance test. In paper pencil test, the subject is provided with a test form or test booklet which contains all these items. Responses are written by the subject on either the test form on a separate answer sheet. Example are here: Raven progressive matrix test of intelligence and differential aptitude test battery are some of the example of paper pencil test. In this such type of test, testee need paper and pencil. Next is performance test. Require motor or manual responses on the examinee. Performance tests require movement of object from their respective places in a particular order, and generally but not always involving manipulation of concrete equipment or materials. Performance tests are especially useful for deaf testers, testees with speech defects, illiterate testees, foreign testees. These are helpful. Next is individual group test. These tests are depending upon the mode of administration, how these tests administered to the testees. So first is individual test. A test can be said individual test in the same that they can be administered to only one person at a time. Many of these tests require oral responses from the examinee. Individual intelligence tests are preferred by psychologists in clinics, hospital, and in other setting where clinical diagnoses are made. Next is group test. Group test can be administered to a group of persons at a time. Group tests are designed as not only to permit the simultaneous examination of a large group, but they also use simplified instruction and administration procedure. So in individual test is administered by the researcher to a one person, and while group test can be administered to a large number of persons at the same time. In individual test, researcher administers the test face to face and remains seated before the test taker and notes down the responses. In group test, the instruction about answering the items etc. are written on a test which the test taker reads and answers the question accordingly. So the test administrator explains the instruction to the entire group Individual tests are time consuming but are important way of getting responses from children and from those who do not know the language. Group tests are easy to administer and are also less time consuming. However, the responses are fraught with certain limitation. The respondent may not be motivated enough to answer the question, may give fake responses. So these are disadvantages also of such type of test. Next is informal test and standardized test. Informal tests are constructed by the classroom teacher. These tests are developed by a class teacher in order to assess the achievement of student in particular subject. Example, achievement test in the subject of biology for class 9th and for class 11th. These tests are useful for evaluating the learning outcome and day-to-day progress of student. Next is standardized tests. Standardized tests are designed by test specialists, tried out experimentally, pre-tested. Standardized tests are scored and interpreted under standard conditions. Standardized tests are used to evaluate complex learning outcomes. Next are tests depending upon difficulty level. Psychological tests are also classified into speed and power test. In a speed test is one of which individual differences depend upon the speed of the performance. The item included in such test have low difficulty level. The time limit is so short that no one can finish all the item. The individual score reflects only the speed with which he walks. The test is intended to measure the speed of responses. In speed test, there is a time limit within which the test taker is required to answer all the items. Such a test evaluates the individual on the basis of time taken to answer the items accurately. In a speed test, all the items are of the same degree of difficulty. And next is, here you can see example criteria speed and accuracy in differential aptitude test battery is an example of speed test. Next is power test. A power test has time limit long enough to permit everyone to attempt all items, and the items included in such test have high difficulty level. The test includes some items too difficult for anyone to solve that nobody can get perfect score. So on the other hand, power test assesses the underlying ability or power of individual by allowing them sufficient time. This test does not have any time limit. In power test, the items are generally arranged in an increasing order to difficulty. If a person, for example, is unable to solve the sixth item, she will have difficulty in answering the subsequent items. It is, however, difficult to construct a pure speed or power test. So majority of the tests are combination of both speed and power. Here you can see culture fair test, the test of language free. They also attempt to eliminate skill, feeling that vary from one culture to another. Test measuring traits in different areas, how to measure. While tests are often used in research or making decisions about people, tests must be selected and used with great care. The test user or the decision maker should not rely on a single test. So that test data should be combined with information about person's background, interest and past performance. So next is, you can see here limitation of psychological test. Many applicants experience anxiety, and human mind is beyond any assessment and limit. At a time, one can behave completely different from original state. Next limitation is negative attitude of applicant can alter the validity of test. And next is administration and interpretation can be done only by qualified psychologists. So these are all are limitation of psychological test. Here conclusion about this psychological testing. Psychological testing is a series of tests that measure traits. It also measures feelings, beliefs and abilities that can possibly lead to people's problem. It is helpful to know the test result. As a part of psychological test, a tool is used which can detect psychological characteristics such as current condition and endurance characteristics of a person, group or organization. So this is psychological test that we have completed today. Next time we will move further. Thank you.